Good morning. Welcome to another Velocity Sunday morning. Today we are continuing our series looking at how Jesus is a servant. And we've been in this theme of healing. And today we're going to talk about how Jesus heals a blind man. If you haven't been with us before, or maybe if you have, just a few reminders. Number one, we strongly encourage you to have a Bible with you, whether that's a physical Bible like this one, or you have it open in another tab or another app on your whatever device you're watching and consuming this teaching on. We strongly encourage you to do that. Secondly, perhaps just as important, but not quite, we also strongly urge you to have someone to discuss the discussion questions with. We believe that learning best happens in community with other people. So whether that person is a sibling, a parent, a friend, whether they be in person with you or at a distance, we strongly encourage that for you to get the most out of this teaching. Did you know that color blindness is a condition that limits the range of color that some people see? Reds and greens may be indistinguishable, for example, or purples may appear only as blues. Some colorblind people may not be able to see up to 90% of the various shades of color, resulting in a perspective dominated by browns and blacks. Recently, technology has been developed to help most colorblind people see a full range of the color spectrum. This tech has come in the form of special sunglasses. People have been sharing their videos of trying these glasses on for the first time. The depth of color these people can now see is matched, it seems, by the depth of emotion that soon color their faces. So this leads us to our first question of the day. What would you miss most if you suffered from color blindness? Take 25 seconds and discuss this with your discussion partner now. I'm sure that if I was colorblind, I'd miss the beauty of nature, seeing trees in the autumn as they burst forth with color, seeing mountains and rivers and all the things of God's creation. Practically speaking, I'd miss some of the nuanced elements of being able to properly enjoy a board game where different color pieces represent different players, and that can be kind of a frustrating thing in a hobby I really enjoy and love. Let me know down below what you think you'd miss most if you suffered from color blindness. You know, watching people see a wide array of colors for the first time is moving, in part because they didn't even know what they were missing. But on an even greater scale, this world is full of people living in darkness, the spiritual darkness of sin, and they don't even know it. What's more, they don't know that there is a cure for spiritual blindness. In this session, we will follow the story of Jesus healing a man who was born blind. This amazing miracle would help reveal some of Jesus' identity to those able and willing to see. He is the light of the world to push back the darkness of sin, and he is the Son of God who came to do the works of his Father. All right, so as we get started this morning, remember I said you're going to need a Bible. Our first passage we're going to be reading is John chapter 9, verses 1 through 9. And so be sure to open up with me and we will read. Of course, it will be up on the screen here behind me, but I always encourage you to have a Bible open in front of you so that you can see it for yourself. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It is not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him here before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" And some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "No, I am the man." In Jesus' day, and somewhat in ours, the thought prevailed that all suffering was punishment of someone's sin. So the disciples wanted to know who messed up. Had the man sinned in the womb, or did his parents sin so that he was born blind? In a general sense, the disciples were not wrong for thinking this way. All brokenness and suffering in our world is certainly a result of sin, and sin always has consequences, but people had extended this principle too far. A specific sin hadn't caused his blindness, but its purpose was about to come to fruition. So, this leads us to our more in-depth question for today. Our first one, I should say. Why are we prone to connect all suffering to a person's sin? Why are we prone to do this as people? Take a good 40 seconds and discuss this with your discussion partner now. The disciples asked about the specific cause of the man's blindness, but Jesus answered in terms of its purpose. This man was blind so that Jesus could reveal himself as the light of the world and do the works of God by healing this man of his lifelong blindness. Jesus broke through this man's physical blindness. Similarly, Jesus' light breaks through our spiritual blindness, that we may see him in faith and be saved from our sin and join him in the work that he is already doing. Jesus repeated a statement he had made in the previous chapter. He is the light of the world. John chapter 8, verse 12. This statement can feel quaint or sentimental to us, but it would have been vivid for his disciples listening. With a flip of the switch, we have light anywhere we are. Even our smartphones can function as flashlights, right? But during this time, there was no modern lighting, so once the sun set, you were in the dark. All work had to be done while there was still light outside. Jesus was saying that he is the source of light that pushes back the darkness and lets us see that we too can do the works of God. The same God who spoke forth light to begin the creation process in Genesis 1 has shown forth light through Jesus to make a new creation. See 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verses 6 as well as chapter 5 verse 17. He has done this so that we might become the light of the world, reflecting the light of Jesus. See Matthew chapter 5 verses 14 through 16. Jesus tells us exactly what it means to shine light, to do good deeds in his name. When we do good works that reflect who Jesus is, God gets the glory. This leads us to our next question. What are some ways that you can be the light of Christ in your spheres of influence? What are some ways that you can represent, can reflect, can shine forth the light of Jesus to those around you, to the people that you know? Take a good 40 seconds to discuss this now. I don't know about you, but I think one of the key things that we can do to start to shine the light of Christ is to make sure we're not seeing with blinded eyes of selfishness. And so often that manifests itself by not seeing other people as human beings. So often, particularly when we're dealing with people who maybe are driving or people who are on the internet hiding behind usernames, we tend to see people more as objects, things that are in our way, as though this story is all about us. And we stop seeing people as people. But we need to have the eyes of Jesus and see other people as people who are valid, who have needs and wants and desires and hopes and dreams and failures in their lives. And then we can start to pour out the love of Jesus that he's poured into our lives on them. But so often you and I become so self-centered and so focused that the views and needs and wants of other people start to fade from our view. That's how I would answer that question. How did you answer it? Why don't you drop me a line and let me know? I never know who all's watching this video, and I'd really like to hear from you. So let us know. Velocity@firstfreechurch.org. Drop us an email. Throw it in the comment section. Shoot the YouTube channel a private message. Please just let us know. What are some ways that you hope to be influencing people in your life with the light of Jesus that he's poured into your life? How do you hope to reflect that and overflow that into the lives of those around you? All right, let's continue reading. We'll be in John chapter 9, starting in verse 29 and going through verse 33. So be sure to have your Bible open. Of course, again, it'll be on the screen behind me. We know that God has spoken to Moses. Let me pause here for a minute. So in between the section that we read and this one, we have to note that people are questioning who did this to this man, and they even he's brought before the Pharisees. And remember with the part we left off with, people were like, wait, is this the same guy or not? And he's brought before the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are questioning him, demanding to know who it was that healed him. So all right, here's the Pharisees talking. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, that's talking about Jesus, we do not know where he comes from. He answered them, why is this an amazing thing? So this is the blind man talking. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. All right? I think this is amazing. You know, this formerly blind man's neighbors are so astounded that he could see. They took him to the Pharisees, as I said. They questioned him about his healing. And when he attributed his healing, once again, on the Sabbath, kind of a theme with Jesus here, to Jesus, they interpreted the man's parents, or interrogated the man's parents, to verify if he'd really been blind. See John chapter 9, verses 8 through 28. They didn't want to believe that this man had been blind because they refused to acknowledge Jesus' significance and his power. This leads us to our next question, and that is, why do you think this particular healing was so unique that made the Pharisees so upset? Take 30 seconds and discuss it with your discussion partner now. You know, a person's speech, actions, or mannerisms reveal some things about that person. An accent can place a person from a certain part of the country or from a different country altogether, right? A person's clothes might reveal that person's what college they went to, or their vocation, or how they see themselves even, right? The Pharisees said they did not know where Jesus was from, though they did know he was from Galilee. See John 7, verse 52. But they wanted to belittle him, as if he wasn't important enough to even spend the effort to get to know him or where he was from. But the healed man claimed that they should be able to tell that Jesus is from God because of what he had done. It wasn't the mud or the pool of Siloam that opened his eyes, it was Jesus. And if Jesus did that, it's because God did it through him. The man who was blind reasoned that healing comes from God, so Jesus must be from God. How ironic that this unlearned blind man had to teach the Pharisees good theology and good logic. He saw clearer than the Pharisees did. Jesus does the works of God because Jesus is from God. See John chapter 5, verse 36. And if this is true, then Jesus' work shows us what God cares about. What did Jesus do? Just as in this narrative, he corrected the misunderstanding, taught the truth, healed the blind, befriended someone who and confronted the proud. All these things show that God's love for us, but they reveal his plan to push back the darkness and undo the brokenness in the world and restore creation. This leads us to our next question. What does Jesus' action in this account teach us about what we should do, how we should live our lives? What did Jesus' actions in this passage here in John chapter 9 teach us about how we should live our lives? Take 30 seconds and discuss it now. I think it can be really easy to give simplistic answers like be kind, be nice to other people. But I really hope that you look at the life of Jesus and you let the uncomfortableness sit with you, that the Spirit would convict you about the areas in your life where you struggle to follow in the steps of your Master Jesus. We're going to continue reading John chapter 9, picking up in verse 35. John chapter 9, verses 35 through 41. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, that being the formerly blind man, out of the temple, and found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." And he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains." The Pharisees responded to the formerly blind man's testimony by throwing him out of the synagogue. See John 9:34. So Jesus seeks him out. Now that he was cut off from all spiritual connection of his family and his people, what would he do? Would he blame the man who had healed him? No. In fact, upon learning that the man was the Son of Man, the promised Messiah, he responded with faith and worship. This was the work of God in his heart. This man went from describing Jesus as a mere man in verse 11 to calling him a prophet in verse 17 to saying that Jesus must be from God in verse 33. But his confession here is something different altogether. He called Jesus Lord and worshipped him as Lord, verse 38. The man who could not see anything earlier in the day now saw Jesus and saw him for who he is. He didn't just receive physical sight, this man received spiritual sight. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, he confessed with his mouth that Jesus is Lord and worshipped him. This is precisely what happens to every Christian at the moment of conversion. This leads us to kind of our final question of the morning, and that is, how can we respond to Jesus' goodness and grace in our lives this week? How can we respond appropriately to the goodness and grace that has been poured out so freely into your life this week? All right, take 30 seconds and discuss this now. I don't know about you, but I think that this lesson is just super important because here we are seeing that um, spiritual blindness is the result of not seeing Jesus properly. And our world is filled with people who think that Jesus was a good person, or maybe that he was a prophet, or that he was a good teacher, or that he had some really good things to say, and he did some really nice things to help some people, but they don't see him properly as the Messiah, the promised one from God, the one who is God's Son, the second member of the Trinity, one who came and died on the cross for your sins, specifically here in 2021 or whenever you're watching this. But it doesn't matter. We need to see Jesus for who he is. It doesn't matter what you and I think is true about Jesus. We need to see him as he truly is. Our opinions don't matter, but what we think about Jesus is really important. And when we see him as he truly is, the eyes of our hearts are opened to the truth about him. All right, I hope that this morning has been helpful as we've talked about Jesus healing this blind man and what it can mean to have spiritual blindness, much like the Pharisees had. I hope that you take some time and click on this video and just spend some time worshiping the Lord. I've been listening to this song a lot lately, and it's just been super encouraging and it's been really worshipful for me. All right, have a great morning.